You cannot define your success or failure in that moment based on whether she receives what you're doing. Yeah. This is about what kind of partner do I want to be to her? What kind of man do I want to be? Do I want to be the kind of man that can leave my own issues behind, that doesn't feel like I have to defend myself and explain myself and can just attend to the hurt in front of me? Or do I want to be the man that always leads with talking about himself and defending himself?
What's going on, everybody? I am here with Dr. Jake Porter. Jake, I'm so excited for this episode. This topic is, I believe, really messes with the recovery, both marital and relational recovery and also individual recovery. And that's the whole concept between defense versus deficit. Jake, I'm going to have you explain it. Normally, I try to tee up the topics, but you're going to do such a better job. Can you tell the audience what we're talking about when we're talking about the difference between defense versus a deficit?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I love talking about this subject. I do think it's a total game changer for so many individuals and so many couples. And the way I start is by using, this trite expression, if all you have is a hammer, then everything becomes a nail, right? And I will just admit that in my own training, working in the field of sex addiction and betrayal and all this kind of stuff, early on, I had a hammer. And the hammer was, if some dude isn't showing up, doing the right thing, manning up in the moment, hold her pain, whatever it is, I'm going to come down on him. And just through experience and getting to know these people and learning learning about myself and research and all this, I came to see, wait a minute, hold on. It's just not that simple. It's just not that black and white. And I came to appreciate this distinction between a defense mechanism and a deficit. So this is rooted in this concept of a deficit is rooted in developmental neurobiology. And the idea here is that every human being, from actually in utero, even before birth, we're developing, we're becoming, we're never staying the same. We're always becoming. But there are these critical times in our development where our brains and our nervous systems are learning particular capacities. This could be like the ability to calm yourself down. This could be the ability to, kind of shake off that feeling of shame. This could be the ability to read other people's facial features. And sometimes there are genetic issues here, but a lot of times it's early relational experiences. And here's the thing that I always say is every human being has deficits. No one is perfectly developed in every domain of cognition and emotional skill and all. Nobody is, okay? But if we've got a deficit, what that means is this is an area where there needs to be growth. It's not an area where a capacity is on board, but someone's just not doing it. That's different. That's where we get into defense mechanisms. A defense mechanism is, I just don't want to feel this shame. And so I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to attack you and we're going to talk about what you didn't do, right? Or I'm just going to stonewall you and go silent. That might be a defense mechanism. That's entirely different than a guy who, man, he's just crumbled inside and he's fallen down into this little pit of shame and he's frozen. He's not coming out because the capacity isn't there. So that's sort of the bottom line there, is that a defense mechanism, I could do otherwise. It's not a conscious thing. I'm not saying I'm consciously doing this, but the capacity's there, but I'm avoiding some uncomfortable thought or emotion using this defense mechanism versus a deficit where, man, this is an issue of needing to grow, needing to expand my capacity.
Dude, such a great, the way I look at it is when I saw you speaking on this a couple months ago, that was the first thing that hit me was the difference between I I don't want to do this. I'm defending this. I'm resisting this. I'm pushing this away. I'm avoiding this. I'm being manipulative, potentially narcissistic, grandiose, whatever, So, and I think that's that off-putting stuff. And that's that hammer, right? Where the therapist is like, don't you dare gaslight. Don't you dare manipulate. Don't you dare avoid, right? So, and then whereas deficit is, I don't know how to empathize because I don't personally value empathy because it just wasn't ever really modeled to me in a constructive way. So, when I hear the words, Jake, oh, that must be hard, I'm pissed. I'm like, yes, homie, it's hard. It's why I told you I want some help here. And so, to me, I don't value empathy in that, and I know that's not true, but you know what I mean. I don't value empathy in that way that a lot of the women do because it was never done to me. My friends and I don't do that together. My dad and I never did that together. In business, we don't. It's solution. Just a manhood. It's man up, find a way, right? And so. That is a deficit. So now she's expecting me to crawl in the hole. Brother, I want to crawl in the hole. And I really do want to crawl in. And and you know what I do? I crawl in, but when I'm down there, I'm like, okay, hey, I came up with 6 solutions for you to get over this. And so I want to, and I think I'm doing it, right? I crawl down there with her and I'm like, hey, here's my 5 tips for you to get over this so we can move, right? So
how does that go over?
Not well, right? Not well. So, so Jake, I want to go into like context with this because I think one of the things where a lot of these podcasts fall short is too philosophical. So I want to like really talk about the tangibles here. So let's get into some examples. Do you have a really great one that you see the most common within? Let's choose a therapeutic environment. So the couple's in there, they're trying to do productive therapy, but it's not being productive. Can you talk to us about a deficit versus defense strategy that you see most often?
I absolutely can. And there was an immediate scenario that came to my mind when you asked that. And so imagine this scenario. It's going to be very familiar to many listeners. And if it's not familiar to a listener yet, your day's coming probably if you're partnered with somebody. So here's a betrayed partner. And the goal in this moment is that this betrayed partner is able to express her pain, share her grief over what was lost, the storyline she had in her head, what she thought she knew, all of that. And so this guy is supposed to, and I'm doing air quotes here if you can't see me, hold her pain. What the heck does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? Hold her pain, which I do know what it means, but I think we could get better.
I know what it means intellectually, but I don't know what it means from a feeling.
Right. Exactly. And quick little side trail here, and I'm going to get right back to your question. What you said is so dead on a minute ago about getting practical about this, about, I don't know how to do this. I've got an online program for couples called Choose Connection Academy, and we screen the couples intensely. We've screened over 425 couples. Mm-hmm. Okay. Pam does the screening. She's our director of couples care. You met her a couple weeks ago. So Pam has met with 425 couples, and she will tell you that the vast majority of these men say to her, I want to give this to her. I don't know how. I want to, and I just don't know how to do it. So that's exactly right what you said. So here's this guy. He doesn't know. Maybe intellectually, okay, hold her pain, but like how? Okay, so she unloads, and maybe it is anger, but mixing there. But maybe it's just pain. It's just like how devastated she is, and he is silent. He like deer in the headlights, silent. Okay. What's going on there? So my lens, when all I had was a hammer, when all I knew was guys get defensive and they defend themselves, is this guy is either going to some sort of dissociative, like intellectualizing state, or he's stonewalling her, or he's withdrawing. Okay. And so I come out hard,
right? In his own shame, right?
In his own shame,
which is a sense making it about him instead of her, right?
Right. Which could very well be going on, but it's like, get over it, right? Man up. man up. I had a guy tell me that a therapist said that to him like last week. It pissed me off so badly.
And so just for the audience, that get over it, man up, that's what Jake's talking about, is the hammer of defense. He's defending himself. He's defending himself. He's defending himself. Right. So I just wanted to pause and right. That's what we're talking about, is man up, stop being a little girl. Like, you hurt her, get your shit together. Right.
Yeah. You broke it. You bought it. You know, that whole thing. And here's what I say when I train therapists on this stuff. It's like, do you really think you're going to heal shame with shame?
Nice. I like
that. Is that the strategy that we're employing? And I don't say that to then shame the therapist, because I have done that. I want to own that earlier in my career, I was that guy. I was. And guess what? The ladies loved it. Okay. And I'm not going to pretend like that wasn't a part of it, because they're like, they see me standing up for them and coming hard against him, and he's the villain in this, all this. Okay. But here's the deal. I've got a 4.5-year-old at home, almost 5-year-old. Okay. The other day, my wife was out of town, and I was in my bedroom, and they were across the hall playing in my other daughter's room, and I can hear what's going on. And the older one, the almost 5-year-old, is manipulating the 2.5-year-old. I can hear it happening. Okay. Because she wants the toy. The older one wants the toy that the young one has, and all this stuff. And finally, MJ's the older one. She just took the toy. I heard this happen. Right. And of course, Lottie's upset and all that. I walk in there and I say, what's going on? And MJ, the older one, says, oh, and starts to lie to me. And I say, hold up. I heard everything. What happened? And she goes into it again. Well, she did it. And I said, no, baby, I heard what happened. You took that toy from her. She had it first and you took it from her. And that's not what we do. That's not right. And my daughter, her eyes went from wide to, she just collapsed. Her head, she hung her head, her shoulders dropped. And what was the next thing I did? I walked over to her and I scooped her up and I said, hey, listen, I love you. It's okay. You're okay. Sister loves you. You love her. We're learning, we just don't want to treat each other that way. Okay. And she hugged me back. And I said, do you want to say anything to your little sister? And she said, I'm sorry, Lottie. And sister gave her a hug and, hey, we're good to go. Right. Back up. Okay. Now here's what's critical there. Her little nervous system is still being developed. And there's all kinds of developmental neuroscience to back that up, what I'm about to say. Her nervous system, she went into shame. When I disciplined her, she went into shame. She had a collapse internally. You could see it in her body. She collapsed. Then I came in and my nervous system upregulated her out of that, brought her back up into her window of tolerance, back up whole brain online. Her nervous system cannot do that on its own. It is the repeated experience of me doing that, her mother doing that, her teachers doing that, right? Until her nervous system can do it on its own. What happens to the person whose parents came in, made the correction, but never made the repair, never upregulated them? That's this guy I'm talking about.
Deficit.
It's a deficit. The capacity to upregulate out of shame was not built into him. So this is not a guy who is just making it about himself.
Well, I think I hate to interrupt, but I think you left something out there, which is most of the time it doesn't end and there's no repair. I would say 90+% of the time there's additional shame. There's punishments. There's, how could you do this? You're a liar.
What's the matter with you?
Right, exactly. Right. So now, not only are we not doing repair and teaching healthy regulation strategies, we're actually insinuating that anytime you do something like this and get caught, you need to shrink. You need to withdraw. You need to escape. You need right. And so again, I think the audience can kind of see where we're getting at with this is, if this happened to this person and it happened for their first 18 years of their life, now when they're confronted with this situation, you're expecting him to arguably do the most horrific thing he's ever done to the person that he loves most, with consequences that are more dire than probably any consequence he's ever going to face in his entire life. And now he's sitting in this place and you're expecting him to show up with what I would argue 10 out of 10 emotional intelligence, self-awareness, social awareness. I don't know, man. I don't know a lot of guys who can operate at that peak capacity, in my opinion.
No, it's tough. And there is another complicating factor to add to it, where what happens, so many of us, what we do is, and all of this is non-conscious. Okay. I'm not saying anybody's doing this purposefully, but we intuitively know where our deficits are. Okay, so if I'm a man who has a deficit around upregulating from shame, I don't have a lot of shame resilience. What that is like is that subconsciously, it's like if I fall in that hole, I can't climb out. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm a failure. So see the spiral, how it just adds to the sense of shame. So what am I going to do if I feel myself headed there? I'm going to defend against it. So now what we have is a situation where I use a defense mechanism to protect a deficit I have. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. So I feel the shame coming on.
Most often, though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes someone just falls in that hole. And it's that first scenario that I played out where, okay, she just put her pain out there and he just goes silent and he's sort of in this internal collapse. Sometimes that's it. But more often than not, what happens? He feels it coming on non-consciously. He feels it coming on. What does he start to do? Mm-hmm. Denial, projection, rationalization, displacement, regression, repression. So,
yeah, especially my population, high successful, high achieving men. Yeah. We are, part of successful male culture is protect image at all costs, right?
Absolutely. So I non-consciously now go to, I'm going to pick apart the details of what you said. That was a Tuesday, not a Thursday. It was only 4 times, not 5 times, right? I'm going to go to these other defense mechanisms because intuitively, deep down, I know I can't do the shame thing. And I'm failure aversive. That's another male thing, right? We can't fail. We can't be weak. When the reality is, look, we're all imperfect, right? But my God, if I feel like I can't be imperfect, then I have to be dishonest about it because the reality is we're all imperfect. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. As you're speaking, I hope the couples listening to this can hear the complexity, right? It's the very partner who has been betrayed this is just so ugly. When you really think about what this does to these ladies, mm-hmm. I mean, it rips them to pieces in almost every dynamic of humanity possible.
Oh, yeah.
Physical appearance, their desirability, their performance in bed, it's just so here's this person who has been attacked in pretty much every way possible by your actions, and then here's you over here who doesn't even really, you're pretty solid at cognitive empathy, but like the other areas of empathy, it's, statistically they're probably poorly developed. It's very rare that you meet a man, Jake, you're an exception when, and I feel you can do all 3 really, really well, but that's just, I admire you for that, but I would say that's statistically not common. Right. But then on top of that, you have wounds of, especially men, I find, and this is, I hear this all the time. I'll get emails from partners who don't want their husbands to join my program because they're like, you're too supportive. They need boot camp. You're taking them out for these intensives and they're bonding and having this, I say right on my website, recovery needs to be fun and engaging and mentally stimulating. I say it right on there and they'll attack me for that. No, it does not. You should see my husband. When I say this, he's such a coward. I'll tear him to pieces and he'll just sit there and slump down. He won't say anything. He needs this, he needs that. And it's always, I never respond to those emails, by the way, because it's not going to go well when I do. But I hope for all the couples listening to this, what a mess, right? What a mess. We have somebody hurt in the most atrocious ways possible. We got a guy over here who arguably is really just not great at any of the things that he really needs to be great at in this moment in time. And then we have people fighting about the very deficits and defending the deficits. And I think the thing that really became so clear in the beginning of this, Jake, is how normal and human all of this is. A hurt individual over here, and then a very scared person that is wondering, do I even know how to do what all these therapists and all these podcasts are telling me how to do? It is Gosh, Jake, what a difficult situation to be in, where you're trying not to be defensive, but you feel like people are kind of poking on an area that, frankly, you just don't know how to do. And, I think that the challenge for me with deficit, Jake, is I see a lot of quitting these guys after a while.
Sure.
If we keep hitting the deficit and
Sure.
treating it like they are being defensive, maladaptive, manipulative, narcissistic, whatever, eventually the guys quit. So I think the reason I was so passionate about bringing you on here was, I hate saying this, but man, there's so many guys who come into my program there's a lot of quitting them. And it's really sad that it's gotten to that point, but it's not because they don't love their wives anymore. It's not because they don't want to try to find a way to make it work. They're just tired of having their deficits attacked. Because they feel this human desire to, can you sympathize with me? Can you help me do this? Can you work with me while I get better at this? I just want you to speak to all that, because I think when I said in the beginning of the podcast, this really harms the relational recovery. That's what I mean by this, is there's just this disconnect of, man up. You're supposed to be doing all these things I've heard in the podcasts. And then this guy over here, which is like, honey, I want to, but I'm really don't like being around you, talking to you. I hate going to couples therapy, because I just feel like all it is you beating me up on something that I frankly just don't know how to do. And I'm scared I might never know how to do it, because again, one of the big things, and this is I don't know how the ladies will feel about this, but this field has this, I feel, this overemphasis on, hey, if you can just empathize in this really meaningful way, then everything will get better. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have my doubts that it will be as miraculous as everyone says. I think it'll help. But I think that it's just a scary thing, because these guys are like, crap, can I even get to this place where we can heal this to be better than we were before? I'd love you to speak on that, because I find this division, and it just keeps splitting couples further and further and further. And there is a point of, I'm not gonna say a point of no return, but there's a point where you're so split. I mean, gosh, it takes everything you have to come back together. And I think a lot of what we're talking about today contributes to that split, even though the irony of it all is, Jake, we're trying to come together through this work, and it's splitting people.
Yeah. And I've gotten emails from partners who they hear me teach on this subject, and they say, oh my goodness, thank you. That actually helps me make sense of my experience. It actually helps me understand what's going on, in my partner opposite me in these couple sessions or in these conversations. And so I think it can bring relief on both sides.
I agree.
Because when we have a more robust understanding of reality, things just go better. Being reality-based leads to better mental health and clarity and happiness and all of that kind of stuff. And this is reality. Reality is every person we deal with, there's going to be a mixture of defenses and deficits and variations of capacity in various realms. There's a both and to this topic, though. And it is that, right, on one side, everything's treated with the hammer. It's all the man up. It's all that. On the other side, you could say, oh, well, look, that's a deficit. He just doesn't have that capacity. So lay off. Right. And here's what I say. The moment I recognize that there's a deficit that I have, I now have a choice. Do I want to work on that or not? And I believe that 99% of the time, there can be growth. There can be expansion of capacity. There are some rare circumstances where there are maybe genetically based issues or traumatic brain injury issues or certain very, very rare, and I hate even bringing this up because then it becomes like an excuse. Some very rare expressions of neurodivergence where that's it. It's not going to get beyond this baseline. But most of the time, there can be some growth. I'm not promising everybody becomes Mr. Empathy, okay? But there can be some growth. And in most cases, the betrayed partners I've worked with, they know their husbands. I'll tell you a story that happened one time. I was working with this couple, and this guy had the assignment of writing an emotional restitution letter. Okay. And this is going to be a stretch for him. This is a guy who, whew, I mean, we were working the empathy thing hard. We were, like real, and he wanted to. He had a severe deficit that he was starting from. And they came in the session, and, I get the whole thing set up, and okay, he reads his letter, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this is bombing. She is going to come unglued when we get done with this thing. And I'm just bracing. I'm like dreading where this was going to head. And so it's over. And I asked him, hey, what was that like to read? And he said, it was meaningful to me. I'm so glad I did this and got to read this to her. And I turned to her and I said, okay, how was that for you? And she burst into tears and she said, thank you. And here's what I forgot. She knows her husband better than I do. She recognized that for him, it was exceptional.
Yeah, well said. Because when I compare myself to you, Jake, I feel like just a turd, right? Like my 120% empathy is like on the Jake scale is like a 1.2. Your wife was like, if your wife was married to me, she'd be like, this guy is a total loser. I'm leaving him. But to your point, if I did like a 4 on the Jake scale, that would be like 12 on the Roland scale. And my wife would so appreciate the effort because she knows, man, this is so hard. So I want to dive into this from a specificity standpoint. I'm going to choose you can chime in as well. I'm going to speak on the guy's standpoint. I never mess with the lady's standpoint ever. I'm going to have you do that. So let's talk about like a tool here. So for my wife and I have to do it retroactively. One day I hope I can do things proactively. I'm just not at a, my wounds are just still too unhealed to do it proactively. So what do I mean by this, guys? So let's say something doesn't go well. And hopefully you and your partner have gotten to a point where you guys have drawn some boundaries and started to realize this. And this is so important in betrayal because things can go so unproductively, and you guys need to start sensing when that's happening and have agreements on, hey, it's okay to call it and walk away for a little bit. You guys need to do that. It's so hard for couples because there's always one person that doesn't want it to end, they're like, oh, of course, just walk away, right? The classic comment. So anyways, so you guys have separated for a second. You're starting to recognize that this conversation is becoming unproductive. Guys, what I have chosen to do is I'll sit down and I'll actually bust out my computer and I'll do a quick little, we have a formula we use in my recovery groups. So what I encourage the guys to do is work that formula and then we have an app that we use to communicate with the groups. They'll go into there, they'll express this to the guys. The guys may or may not be able to respond depending on the time of day and when it happens. But usually by the time you have written it out and you have actually articulated it to your recovery group. And so for those guys, if you don't have a recovery group, gosh, this is going to be really hard for you. You need a sounding board with deficits. You need other people. Einstein said it best. We can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Right. You need 10 other guys to be able to help you navigate this deficit. Because the truth is, somebody in the group doesn't have that deficit, probably multiple people. That's right. And they'll be able to come and say, yeah, that's weird. Here's another way to think of it, right? So what I have done, and again, I'm not going to say I'm good at this. My wife's probably going to listen to this episode and be like, you made yourself look so good. So what I did this not that long ago. I did this probably last week. I came into her room and I said, hey, when you said that to me, what I heard was that you're disappointed in me. You think I'm not trying. You think that I don't care. And all of that happened in my brain at hyperspeed. And I got super pissed off because literally today alone, I have been to 2 therapeutic interventions, and I was on this group in the morning, and at the gym I listened to a podcast about this very thing. And so for you to come at me and say I'm not trying, it's like, lady, I just put 4 hours of my day into this today alone without you asking. I did it of my own volition. I did it because I want to be a better human, a better husband. And so so I told her, hey, when I heard you say that, I heard you accusing me of not trying, of not caring, of being into myself, of not wanting to improve. And so then I just told her, I said, what I realized though was you just made that statement because you felt like I wasn't giving you what you needed. And instead of staying with that, I made it about me, and I got extremely defensive. Now, what was underneath all of that? A deficit that I live with constantly of inadequacy, being misunderstood. That's a huge one for me. I've been misunderstood from what it feels like my whole life and accused of things that I really am not doing my whole life, right? So I felt like that was happening to me. So that's a strategy I've used. It's not the best. It's retroactive. I wish I could do it in real time. But for you guys who are really struggling, I always say, hey, better late than never, and better sincere than ever. And if you do what I said, journal plus hit up your recovery groups, you'll be pretty well equipped to come to her with a response that I think she's going to really appreciate. Jake, any tips on the guy, and then come into the ladies? I'd love for you to help the women listening to this.
Sure.
How do you decipher between defense and deficit, and how do you deal with both? If you think he is being defensive, what do you do about that? And then if you think it is a deficit, what do you do about that? I'd love for you to articulate that.
Okay. Lots of good questions there. I want to first talk about what your strategy, and what I want to explain is that when you go away to yourself and you start writing this out, you are immediately turning your frontal lobe back on.
Mm-hmm.
So the part of your brain that is able to do self-reflection, appreciation for complexity and nuance, social and moral reasoning, doing that little journal exercise is getting your frontal lobe back on, sharing it with other people, getting the frontal lobe back on, connecting with other people. So that is huge. Now, I want to offer you want some free coaching?
I do. That's why I brought it up.
Okay. All right. So what I heard you say there, Roland, is that you walk around, one of your old scripts is around like getting blamed for things, right? You're being misunderstood and you're getting blamed for, not doing this or that, which is really frustrating and can be really painful because it's like, I'm not being seen. I'm not known here. Right. Okay. And so if you know that there's a deficit around sort of your tolerance of that moment of distress, okay, here's where I would push you, okay? Next time you do that, when you walk back into the room with your wife, all right, lead with the second part of what you said. So start with
that sequencing,
right? The sequencing. So the most important thing here is I am recognizing that you were feeling this, and I missed it. I missed it. When you said that, I recognize you were feeling this. Take a step further. And it makes sense you would feel that because and then take ownership because I betrayed you. Okay.
Yeah.
And
AVR is what
the AVR kind of thing.
Here. Yeah.
Like,
which is smart.
Just do that. Okay. And now here's the thing. Then you say this to her. I've done some reflection on what was going on inside of me. I'm happy to share it or not. The main thing is, I just want you to know I see it now, and I'm sorry.
Well, and everybody, watch what Jake just said to me, and I'm just going to vulnerably admit what happened there. Because a lot of you who are listening probably already heard it and saw it in me. What Jake saw and what he's talking about shows you where I am at with my own trauma, my own wounding, right? So my goal was still to defend, to save face, to image manage. So I want everybody, and I'm saying this because this is what recovery is like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend just because I have all these recovery groups that wounded boy of me who got my ass kicked for 18 years in this horrible house that I couldn't wait to leave. I'm not going to pretend that just because I've gone to a bunch of therapy over the last 10 years that I am better. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to really highlight what Jake did there. He pointed out to me, and this is how recovery works, is Jake showed me, hey, what you're doing here is the sequencing. Now, Jake, can I give you feedback? I would have appreciated you be a little bit harder on me and teach me what I did there, because I love tough love, and I would have loved to see that I still had this desire to be like, see, honey, I'm a good husband. See, I told you, like, this is a whole big misunderstanding. And, but again, it just shows you my priorities. I'm not really there to recognize the hurt. It's like, hey, see, I didn't mean to hurt you. And look at what I learned from my recovery group and my journaling session. See, aren't you proud of me? And again, that just shows you where I am at on my journey. I'm still so wounded that I need to be validated for my awareness, right?
But I want to affirm something. I want to affirm something in you, okay? And it is that you immediately saw it without me being so direct about it. If you hadn't, I promise you I would have followed up.
Sure.
But I would rather you see it and you go, oh, yeah, because that is actually going to be, that is capacity expansion. Mm-hmm. That is you climbing out of a deficit. Okay. Right. So I'm not doing it for you. I mean, I will if I need to, but what I'd rather do is I reach halfway, you reach the other half. That is the process of expanding capacity. Mm-hmm. Now it's a little more cognitive because we're doing a replay of something that happened, but here's what will probably happen. Roland, next time you're in this situation and you find yourself walking into the bedroom to say this, and you're going to remember this conversation, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to do anything that sounds defensive. I'm just going to attend to like the rupture between us and what I missed there. That's all I'm going to say. But there's going to be this little part of you that is like screaming, going, but you got to explain yourself. Okay. It is the actual experience of going in there and not explaining yourself, even though a part of you is screaming to do it. That is the real moment.
That's the work
of capacity expansion.
Yeah, so true. So true. Right. Because without that, I'm probably going to lead with my explanation first, potentially for the rest of my marriage. But it's that acknowledgement of that. Now, so now to enhance my tips to every guy. So now maybe on this journal, I'm going to actually modify this. Now, maybe on this like formula prompt that you're using to be introspective, what if you get into that template, you guys, and then you say at the end of it, you say, what did I miss from her perspective? And then end the journaling session with that. And then remind yourself, hey, when I go in there, lead with that. And then maybe I don't even explain any of this. Because here's the thing that Jake brought up, which is a good point, is in order for you to say that bottom section, you have had to do, and she's going to know this. You have had to do the work, the introspective work, ahead of time. So that's where, to Jake's point, do we even need to justify and explain? Right. Because I think she'll feel all of it in that section of, hey, I totally missed this. You know, I was in all of my own stuff. Do you need to go on and on and on and on for 14 minutes about what your own stuff was? Because here's what's funny, Jake. And I hate that you're bringing this up because I see her like, I'm all proud of myself and she'll be all happy. And then you know what happens, Jake? For the first 2 minutes, she's like, oh, this is so great. And then all of a sudden, the last like 8 minutes of me explaining myself, whoosh, flat face. Right. Like, wow, I'm still hurting in here. And you just gone on and on and on and on and on about 8 minutes of your childhood and what you did with your recovery group and how proud of yourself you are for your introspection. And I see her just affect change. So what a great exercise. And in that moment, and so let's go there and, you know, like go back to that moment. So you're explaining and you're coming from this place of, I need her to see that I'm trying here. I need her to understand how hard I really am working, that I'm not failing at this or not. Right. And so you start seeing that on her face. What happens inside of you? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I keep explaining further. She must not get it. She must not get it. So more words will help. Right. And it never does. It's like, well, let me tell you, did I tell you about this one time in middle school where I got, maybe she'll understand then, right? Exactly. Oh, maybe I'll tell, yeah, exactly. But when you lead with tending to the relationship first, right? So before I go to anything that even sounds like even if it's not defending myself, working on myself, the most important thing, if you come with the mindset of, I'm putting the relationship first, the most important thing here is there's a rupture between us. And until we're okay, nothing's okay. Once you do that,
she's going to be able to listen to you with a whole different ear if you invite her to decide if she wants to or not.
Yeah, I like
and sometimes she will and sometimes she won't. And that's why this is another really critical piece of this for guys to understand. Because listen, your wife is hurt, she's traumatized, whatever. And maybe she's doing her work around it, and maybe she's not, and she's going to have good days and bad days just like the rest of us. You cannot define your success or failure in that moment based on whether she receives what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
This is about what kind of partner do I want to be to her? What kind of man do I want to be? Do I want to be the kind of man that can leave my own issues behind, that doesn't feel like I have to defend myself and explain myself and can just attend to the hurt in front of me? Or do I want to be the man that always leads with talking about himself and defending himself?
Yeah.
And so when I walk in there and I say to myself, I know the kind of partner I want to be here, and I want to be someone who is putting this relationship first and not making it about me. And then I do that, regardless of how she receives it, I can feel good about showing up the way I wanted to.
Well, and Jake, I so appreciate that, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard a guy bring this up to the group, right? Then he goes and does the apology, and then he comes back and is like, well, that backfired. She's such a bitch. But to your point, Jake, let's really think about what you're walking into. We're walking into a room where she is incredibly hurt by you. You don't know what she's been doing in there. She could be stewing, ruminating, complaining to her. And so now you walk in with expectations she validates how good you feel from your introspective exercise and everything you did with your group and your recovery tribe. I think Jake brought up a really good point there, was how unfair is that to walk in with expectations that she honors your recovery exercise
to both of you.
How much she's upset, right?
It's unfair to both of you. It's unfair to her, but it's also unfair to yourself.
Correct.
People have bad days. Okay. Like we all do. If my wife, I love my wife. You met my wife. My wife's awesome. But let me tell you something. If it's been a long day, if she got up had a training session at 6 a.m. and she worked all day and it's 9 p.m., I'm not, she's not going to shine in that moment. She knows it. So she's okay with me saying this right now. Why should I expect that of her? And I want it. Of course, we want to be well received by our partners. We want them to affirm the work we're doing. And sometimes we'll get it. And there's even, there's stats out there from the realm of performance psychology that we do need a win in there every once in a while to keep going when we're receiving the correction and the coaching. But gosh, you know what? It is always within my realm of possibility to choose in alignment with my values. That is a win that is 100% on me. And so if I can define success or failure based on that, not something external to me, that's gold. That's for everybody.
It's all I'm hearing with this is, and again, I'm not just beating up on the guys, the ladies have their trauma too. But what I'm hearing with this is, so much of our conversations have to do with unresolved nonsense for you, expectations that we both have, betrayed partner and addict, right? So we're entering these conversations with, you better understand me. You better appreciate the work that I did. I listened to this podcast. It's so much about me, and we're just totally missing it. It's like, honey, we both love each other. What the heck's going on? And I just don't. I think, Jake, one thing that's really, come so obvious to me, and I've known this about myself, is, just how just so much is still so unresolved, right? I go into those conversations, Jake, with the Roland show too much. Like it's like 80-20. It's like 80%. Let me explain to you how I figured this out. And then 20% is like, oh, and they're there. I'm sorry. Right. It's just, I think this is such a productive conversation. So what we didn't talk about, and I want to talk about is for partners. So defense deficit, can you do a similar, hopefully it doesn't take as long to do as that last example. Can you talk to us about what strategies can a partner use to make sure that they're being as sensitive as possible to this whole defense deficit thing? Is there a way to, how can they do this productively so that we can get to some sort of resolve rather than going into an argument?
Yeah. So I first want to warn against a way of trying to discern between the two that's inaccurate. Because I hear this a lot where a partner will say, he has empathy with all these other people, but not with me. Therefore, I know he has the capacity. Here's the problem with that. Here's why that's not necessarily true. If you matter most to him, then your presence is more likely to put him in a state of threat than the presence of his coworkers, the neighbor across the street, whoever else you've seen.
The other women in your betrayal couple group, right? My wife always did that. I'm over there crying my eyes out on Zoom for this poor betrayed partner. And my wife's looking at me like, this freaking homie right here, when was the last time he cried about me? Right?
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. Those other people aren't your primary attachment. And with your primary attachment, you are more sensitive to threat responses. It's a weird thing, but it's just real. And so if he's already kind of in a limbic state, already kind of getting to the edge of his window of tolerance with you, ladies, then the pressure of that moment, because it's with you, it's not then that the capacity is around, he doesn't have empathy skills. It's an affect tolerance capacity issue, that he can't stay present in that moment of threat to get access to those empathy skills. So that's one thing I like to put out there, that doesn't work, is comparing how he treats you to other people. I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just saying that could be happening, and now there's work to be done around that. Okay. So how do you tell?
The stakes are high. I mean, my wife's my everything. I mean, if I lose her, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't want that. Right. So, the stakes are insanely high. So you're going to probably see a different side of me that you don't normally see.
Absolutely. So how do you tell? Well, and this is going to be really unfair. The first thing I'm going to say, I'm just going to say, like, I spent thousands of dollars and I've spent hundreds of hours learning to tell the difference. So sometimes having a trained professional to give you some insight in this could go a long way. But here's what I would offer besides that is pay attention to his body. Is he getting all worked up, right? So in the defensive words, is his body moving toward dysregulation? If so, yeah, there may be a defense mechanism at play, but it might be that there's a deficit underneath it that he's trying to, like, stay out of. Does that make sense? So pay attention to the body. That's one thing. The other thing to do is go on Google. Okay. Google list of defense mechanisms. All right. And, like, kind of read up on them, because there's a set of, somewhere between, 12 and 20-ish that are really common. And you can be like, that sounds like rationalization. Okay. Well, if it's rationalization, that's a defense. But here's what I would say. You don't have to do this, ladies. I'm just telling you, you're probably more likely to get what you want if you do. All right. You can confront the defense. That sounds like you're rationalizing, or that sounds like you're in denial about what you actually did.
It took me about 2 years to be able to handle comments like that. So
yeah, it takes a long time. Now, how you say it matters. Tone, posture, face, it all matters. And I'm just saying, you can say that and then follow it with, I don't know what's underneath that. I don't know what's underneath that, but my hope is that we can figure it out. You can figure it out, because I do want this relationship with you, and that's not helping.
Ooh,
It's clear.
Freaking Jake, you and your 10 out of 10 empathy nonsense. You're making us all feel bad about ourselves there. But no, that is so true, because I think if that was said to me, maybe it wouldn't have taken me 2 years. I think I could have probably heard that said to me in those first 6 months. I think I could have.
Because I want to kind of underline something. I want to go back to your example of you walking in the bedroom to Lauren, to your wife. Okay. Like you leading with all the explanation, all the self, this and this and this, and I was right, and this is what I heard, and this came up for me. That doesn't make you a bad person. That alone doesn't make you a narcissist. That doesn't, I mean, it could. I'm not saying there aren't people who are I'm not saying it, but that alone doesn't do it. Underneath all of that is a wounded child, and you were talking about that. It's that early trauma work, right? And so, as a professional, that's what I want to remember, is that if someone is engaging defense mechanisms, it's not because they're a monster necessarily. Monsters do exist, but the vast majority of the time, this is someone who's hurt and who doesn't have the know-how. And I think it's important to state this in the conversation, because I would really kick myself if we ended the conversation, I look back and I didn't bring this up. I think in terms of deficits, one of the most common deficits, and this is a broad-reaching deficit as well, is what I would call having a one-person psychology instead of a two-person psychology. A two-person psychology is where my orientation, I've pair bonded with you. We are each other's person now. It doesn't have to be a formal marriage or what it's like, but you're my primary attachment. You're my person. And in our culture, okay, the typical development is that when I pair off with you, I enter into what's called a two-person psychology, which means that my default setting is I'm part of this dyad. Of course, I'm dyad, one two-person system, not two one-person systems, one two-person system. Of course, I'm not going to do something that hurts my marriage. And betrayed partners, they're like, how could you do that? I would never do that. And you know what? They wouldn't, because in their development, they made that transition from one person to two-person psychology. And the thought that they would do this thing that would hurt their relationship, they'd never do that. You take someone who has a lot of early relational trauma, developmental trauma, who maybe has some addiction on board, that could also be a contributor in stunting the growth, even though that addiction piece isn't necessarily necessary for what I'm about to say, but they don't automatically develop that transition from one to two-person psychology.
I promise you, I did not. I don't trust anyone. I get my needs met on my own. I am the only one I trust to do that. So when I got with Lauren, it was like, hey, you can tag along on my journey. And she'll tell you straight up, that was the vibe from day one was, hey, I'm doing me. We can be married, but just so you know, here's what's going to happen on my side of things. And she kicks herself quite a bit for not kind of addressing a little bit more of that, because I believe we are where we are because 6 months into the relationship, once the infatuation kind of wore off, now it's back to the Roland show. I do me. And again, I didn't mean to, Jake. I don't want to do any of that. It's just how I lived my life for those first 25 years. I trusted no one, and only did me, and was very, just kind of, even though I was at parties and it looked like I had friends, in my head, it's the Roland show, baby. It's the Roland show.
Me, myself, and I riding solo till I die. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's this fundamental paradigm shift that I try to help guys have if they want to have it. Here's the thing. You can look, if you want to stay in a one-person psychology, you can. That is your choice. And I would even say this. If you've got two people in a relationship and they're like, hey, we don't want to do the dyad thing. We each have a one-person psychology and it's working for us. Hey, go be
I've seen that.
blessed.
Yeah, I've seen
Go
that.
for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have too. But what's not going to work is if you've got one person operating in a two-person psychology and another person operating in one-person psychology.
Mhm.
That ain't going to
Yeah,
work.
welcome to my marriage. Yeah, exactly. You know,
That's not going to work.
Yep.
And it's probably not going to happen that the two-person psychology person's going to step back into a one-person
Right.
psychology.
And Jake, I think why you hear couples come out of this stronger than before is what Jake just said. What
That's
my
it.
wife and I are now forming for the first time. I'm getting on board with the dyad, and I want the dyad. And you know what's funny? I believe, and I don't know if this is the case for all guys, it's my desire for the dyad that keeps me sober and recovered.
Absolutely.
I can't have both. And now that I have experienced enough and tasted enough of a dyad and seen enough of a dyad, it's all I want, and it makes it quite easy. It makes it quite easy because I can't have both, and what I get in the dyad is everything I've ever wanted. It's why I did everything I did. Was I was trying to get those feelings, and I was never going to get them in my kind of lone wolfness strategy.
So let me say what you just said the way I usually say it to clients. What you are realizing is that you never have to choose between what's best for your marriage and what's best for you.
Yeah, like that.
Because what's best for your marriage is what's best for you.
Yeah.
If you know that your best shot in life is with that woman that you love, if you know that like your best life is with her, those will never be competing interest, your interest and the interest of that relationship.
So everybody listen to this. You want, I know you're already listening like, dude, how do my wife and I hang out with Jake? He has a way to do this. Jake, how do they apply for the whole screening process? What's the website? What's the title of the program? Where do they go?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways to work with me. I do customized intensives for couples where we do a whole bunch of assessments. It's annoying how many assessments we do up front. And then I design a intensive just for you. And you can learn more about that at daringventures.com/intensives. I do have an online group program for couples where I coach couples from all over the world. That is called Choose Connection Academy. And you can go to chooseconnectionacademy.com, learn more about that. If this is interesting, I have a book. They can download it for free, drjakeporter.com/breaking barriers. The name of the book is Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges, the couple-centered recovery model for lasting connection after betrayal. And if this like sparked your interest, it's a short book. It's an easy read. It's got a QR code in the back where you can scan and get tons of videos if you're more of a video person than a reading person. But I give that away for free on my website. If you want a hard copy, you can also get that on Amazon or wherever. But
I love that. But it's free.
Yeah.
Free. I'll put that link in there. Jake, this was a freaking blast, man. I hope so many couples listen to this and kind of saw some of the pitfalls they're falling into. There's a more, I'll tell every couple with this. There is a more constructive way to deal with this process. But I think one thing that I saw all through this podcast was how hard it is actually because of our own stuff.
Yes.
To do it in that constructive way, because there is this just urge to explain, defend, seek justice, seek, it's just this, it's brewing, and all it does is screw up what both of you are trying to accomplish. So Jake, this was so awesome, man. Thanks for
Roland. I enjoyed it very much. You're a fun conversation partner. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, this was a blast, man.